Okay, so today I'm going to show you how to make a quilted stocking. So the supplies we're going to need are 5-inch squares in a white. My white is a little bit more of a off-white or a creamy white. And then a variety of Christmas fabrics. I've chosen these, and I have some ecru colored cotton that I'm going to use for the lining, because you won't really see the lining, so it doesn't really matter the color. And our backs of our stockings are going to be this velvet in burgundy, and the cuff will be the velvet. Okay, so for the template, all you need to do is just trace another stocking about the same size. And I didn't trace mine, I drew it out. And I just drew it on some printer paper, and then I put the two pieces together. I did the bottom on one separate page, and then I turned the top, and then I just taped them together to make my template. And so we don't need this just yet, but I just wanted to show you how to do that. What we're going to do is make half square triangles. So you'll pair one of your 5-inch white with your 5-inch Christmas fabric, and you're going to put them right sides together. And before we get started, I want to tell you that I've cut out all mine from back quarters, but you can just get charm packs of your favorite Christmas fabric and also of the white. So we just put them right sides together, and then you sew a 1/4 inch seam around the entire square. So we're going to go to the machine and do that. Okay, so I've sewed my block all the way around with a 1/4 inch seam. Now I'm going to cut it in a diagonal. And I'll carefully turn it and cut it corner to corner. Okay, and that's going to give us 4 half square triangles. These are big enough so that you can square them up at about 3 inches, but I'm going to square them up at 2.5 inches. I just like the size because it's a small project. So on my ruler, I have my 40-degree line here, and I'm just going to line up that line with the line in between here, the two sides. Okay, and so then I'll just turn it around, making sure I put it on that 45-degree line here again. And cut this side. And then cut my other two sides. Okay, so I have my square ready to go. And so I do this to all of them, and then I'll start putting them together. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do, I've sewn all of my little squares and ironed them flat. So now it's just to lay them out however you want to lay them out. And I like, let's see, I'm thinking I'm going to put them in a pinwheel pattern. And you're going to want to make it as wide as you need to in order to accommodate your stocking. If you want a bigger stocking or smaller, just measure your template, and that way you can decide how wide you need it to be and how long you need it to be. And you can see that I made some out of the velvet that I'm going to be backing it with. just so that I can incorporate some of the back onto the front. And so I'll just continue to lay this out. And then once you have it all laid out, you sew them all together in that pattern. And this is what you'll get. And I've ironed it flat. So the next thing I would do is to layer it with a piece of batting and the backing of our stocking. Now you can do this a few different ways. I say the backing, I mean the lining. So how I would do this is, if you want your lining to be quilted along with your top, you would lay the lining out just like you're going to quilt a quilt and put your batting on top of that, and then the front of your stocking on top of that. And then I would take it to the machine and quilt it. And this, whenever you sew your stocking pieces together, you'll have a seam on the inside of your stocking, but you can serge those edges with your serger or zigzag stitch them so that it looks, a little bit cleaner. The other way you can do this is to just layer your top piece with your batting and quilt it, or you can leave it unquilted if you prefer, just have it like this, but I'm going to quilt mine. And then you would make a lining, cutting out your lining with your template, and just insert that lining so that you don't have seams showing inside of your stocking. But it's a stocking. I'm not worried about that. I don't think it's that big of a deal. You're just going to put all your stocking stuffers in it. So I'm just going to go ahead and quilt both of my layers together, the lining and the top. And then when it comes to the back, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to take your piece of velvet and you're going to line it with your lining fabric. And you can leave out the piece of batting on the back if you want. I'm probably going to put mine in because of the velvet that I'm using is like that stretchy velvet. It's really slinky and stretchy. And so I want to give it some sturdiness, and I'm probably going to go ahead and put the piece of batting in that. It's going to make your seams on the inside of your stocking thick, but as long as you serge or zigzag stitch them, it should be okay. I'm going to layer this together and quilt it, and then I'll come back and cut out my template. So here is my quilted top. And all I did was just follow the lines here and crisscross it, and you can see that on the back, what it looks like. Now, I'm going to set this aside, and I'm going to start on the back piece. Okay, so I've finished quilting my velvet. It was a little tricky because the velvet is stretchy, but I think it came out great. Okay, and you see the inside quilting. So now all we need to do is cut out our template. I'm going to put it on here, and then I'll pin it and then cut it out. You can use a rotary cutter to cut it out, or you can use a pair of scissors, whichever you prefer. I'm probably just going to pin it and use my scissors. And then I will do the same thing to my other panel. Now you got to remember, whenever you're cutting them out, you want whichever direction you want your stocking. Like I want it in this direction. So I will cut my front piece out like this, but then when you go to cut the back, you're going to want to do the opposite and cut the back out this way, so that when you meet them together, they'll align and be in the right directions. Okay, so I pinned it with a couple of safety pins. I'm going to cut it out a little bit bigger than my template, just to allow for the seam allowance, and so that I get it the width that I want, because when I turn it out, I still want it to be pretty wide. I don't want it to be too narrow. Okay. And I might start it off with my rotary cutter and then use the scissors. And then I'll just pin it. And there's our front. So now I will cut out the back. Remembering to turn the template over. Okay, so I've cut my two sides out. Now all we need to do is to bring them right sides together, line them up straight. I'm gonna pin the top even though I'm not sewing the top. Just want to make sure that they stay together. Okay. And then I'll start pinning. I'm using these clips, which are so much nicer than a pin whenever you want to sew thick pieces together. Okay, and then I'm just going to bring it to the machine and I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch seam all the way around except for the top. So I sewed it a 1/4 inch away, and then I went back and I used a zigzag stitch to just finish the edges. If you have a serger, you could do that, use a serger, and it would look nice. So now I'm going to turn it out. Make sure I'm getting all the edges, and you can use a tool, a turner tool, to do that if you want. I'm just going to use my hands. So you'll need to iron it flat. Not bad. Turn it over. I really like this quilting on the back of the velvet. It's really pretty. So now I'm going to make a hanger to go in the corner. So then we'll do the cuff that will fold over and go right over this, and we're going to use the velvet to do that. I've cut out my fabric for the cuff of the stocking, and I'm using a piece of the velvet and the same lining fabric, and I'm going to line that with some interfacing so that it gives it some body whenever I attach it to the velvet cuff. And so how I'm going to do this is, first of all, I cut my pieces 16 by 4.5 inches. My cuff, I measured around the top and it's like 14. So I just cut it a little bit longer to make sure that I've got plenty of room. And then I'm going to iron my piece of interfacing to this. And then I will put them right sides together with my velvet. Then I'm going to go to the machine and I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch seam all along the top so that it attaches to my cuff. And I also wanted to show you that I'm making the hanger, and I have a 2.5 by 4 inch piece for the hanger. And I'm also going to put a little piece of interfacing on my hanger. And then for that, you're just going to fold it over in half and then let it go, and then come back in and fold it in towards that middle line, that center line. And you'll do that twice and then fold it over like this. And then I'll sew a top stitch to sew this close, and also another one on the other end too, just to give it 2 lines of stitching. And then you'll just turn it over and put that inside the top of your stocking when we put the cuff in there, and I'll show you all that when we get to it. Okay, so I sewed the hanger on both sides, the top stitch. And so we're just going to fold it in half. You're going to put your hanger upside down. You want to put one end on the front right into that seam, And I'm going to clip it. And then the other side, I'll put in the back. And then clip that. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is put our cuff inside the top like this. And then we will sew a 1/4 of an inch seam all the way around, sewing in our cuff along with our hanger. Okay, so now all we have to do is turn it out. And here is our stocking. And I'm going to hang it up so you can see how it looks hanging. And then the back looks just as good as the front. So, I mean, you could use either side. If you prefer the velvet side, you could use that side to show. So here's our stocking. And I put it on my door so you can see it against a white background. And here's the velvet side. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. Please let me know if you have any questions or anything in the comments below. And please don't forget to like and subscribe my channel. Thank you.